Welcome to the Psych and Business Podcast. We're here to show you how practical psychology can be useful and make your workplace better. I'm Dr. Ernest Wayde. When we left Dr. Carter last week, she had just received some bad news. She'd been informed that Blue Rivers Hospital had to change their electronic health record system to match that of Optima Health System in the next 6 months. Dr. Carter was feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and stressed, and it all began to show in her behaviors. A friend of hers, who happened to be a psychologist, explained the biological impact of change and how it leads to the natural psychological response of resistance to change. Let's get back to the story. Dr. Carter felt much better now that she knew what was causing her behavior. But knowing is only half the solution. Now she needed to change that behavior. The psychologist reminded Dr. Carter about the relationship between the impact of a change and the resulting emotion and behaviors that often follow the emotions. So, to change that behavior, she needed to reframe the impact of the change on her and the organization. One approach is to think about some of the potential positive aspects of the change and think about what a successful change would look like for her and for the organization. When doing this exercise, it's really important to get as detailed as possible. So Dr. Carter gave this some thought and determined that a successful electronic health record change for her would be one that, first, was easier than the last one. So that meant that her training had to be better and her adoption had to be faster and easier than the previous change. She would also like to see better functionality for her specific practice because she thought the previous EHR didn't really suit well to the work that she was doing as a physician. Thinking about this a little bit more, she began to see that a change, while challenging, could have some positives for her as a physician. Now, as an organization, she could definitely see the benefit of being aligned with the rest of Optima Health hospitals, especially if it led to greater referrals and coordination for their patients and for her staff. Additionally, having a centralized support system funded and supported by the Optima system could lead to cost savings for Blue Rivers Hospital in terms of their IT staff. Having considered some of the positives about the proposed change of the new electronic health record system, Dr. Carter began to see that the impact of the change had some potentially positive aspects that could be beneficial to her and the rest of the organization. This made her feel better about the change, and so she was then able to start thinking about what kind of behavior she could engage in to make sure that the change was successful for her and for the organization. Dr. Carter felt re-energized and ready to move the change forward. She began to talk about setting up trainings for her staff as soon as possible. She felt sure everyone would be able to get on board once they understood how helpful this change could be for them. The psychologist, though, reminded Dr. Carter that she needed to keep in mind that just as she had had a difficult time when she initially heard of the change and had responded with resistance, her employees were likely to respond with resistance as well. The psychologist went on to explain that it would take time and everyone would have to go through their own personal change journey with their own timeline. The psychologist did recommend that to help speed up the process for everybody, Dr. Carter needed to start with getting buy-in for each person impacted by the change. She needed to explain the why of the change, the why the change was needed, focusing on the problem that the change would address and highlighting the benefits of making this change to the electronic health record system. While being honest and addressing the fact that they had just gone through a recent electronic health record system upgrade, she also needed to be positive and help the employees focus on the benefits to the organization and to the different groups like the providers, the nurses, and the administrative staff. Dr. Carter began to realize that managing the change process and the change journey for the organization and herself would not be as simple as she first thought. She determined she would need help and decided to find a consultant who would work with her and Blue Rivers Hospital to help them engage in organizational change management. Let's stop the story there. Change at the individual level can be a challenging process, especially when most people don't understand the biological and psychological elements of change. Most people just don't like change in general, but they don't even know why. Additionally, a lot of organizations don't have a framework, a process, or even anything really that they can use to help their employees through their individual change journeys. Considering the concept of change management really only became popularized in the late 1990s to the early 2020s by psychologists like Lowen and Bridges, a lot of leaders have little to no training on change management. In such a case as with Dr. Carter and Blue Rivers, where a leader has to support the organization and its employees and themselves through an important and impactful change, it's advisable to get professional help in the form of a consultant, someone who has the expertise to provide education, advice, and support through the change process. Remember, over half of organizational change initiatives fail. Don't be in that failing half. Don't try to go it alone if you're not an expert in change management. Get help. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. Feedback is a gift, and we love gifts. Thank you for listening. I hope you will join us again next time.